Hello and welcome to the Where's My Thing podcast, where we help you find your thing,
as well as help us find our thing,
in this exciting world. So today we want to talk a little bit about presenting, some of our past struggles with it, and how you can be a better presenter in the future. Let's get going. So yeah, presenting. This is something that neither myself or Rob are considered professional at. There's a lot of people out there who are better than us, but we have learnt a few things over the years of doing YouTube and, various other things such as teaching, where we've picked up a few lessons and habits along the way that we want to pass on to you. And the reason we wanted to share this is because it's applicable to all sorts of areas of life. In work, you might want to present a project or something you're doing. You might want to do YouTube videos like we do, and you want to come across as a confident presenter in that who knows what they're talking about for the most part. There's all sorts of areas you want to be able to apply this sort of thing, and so we want to touch on some of our struggles.
But before we get into that, we've got our 60-second segment. Now, I went first last time. I believe I've been doing quite well so far, but I'm afraid it's Matt's turn to now get it done.
So, here is a 60-second update of what I've done my week, starting from now. So, Rob, I have just screwed up my timer. I don't know what's happening. There we go. That's wasted 3 seconds. Right. So, this week, Rob, I have re-recorded a podcast that I forgot to record the first time round. You obviously joined me on that. Thank you for doing so. I actually started the Toolbox project, which is the third lesson on the free online woodworking school, and I'm currently 8 parts deep in that. I've got off to a very good start on it. I've started a TikTok profile, which has gone very well. I've tried to get down with the kid. Don't shake your head. You've got one as well. And it's been going down very well with the kids. In fact, I have a statistic here. In 5 videos, I've got 564,000 views. So it's gone pretty well. Apart from that, we've been doing a little bit of work with the development of the marking dies. We've got some awesome prototypes that a picture was sent to me the other day. They're looking very nice. And finally, I received a mallet from James from #woodworking, made from leadwood and olive ash. It is beautiful, almost as beautiful as biscuits.
Oh, I like that ending. That was awesome. Oh, I'm jealous now. I'm not going to be able to do this. Whoa.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. No, that's impressive stuff. I'm glad you reminded me of the podcast. I'd forgotten about that. Because that's a big chunk for me, and I already had quite a few things to go through.
That was a whole, what's that, hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, plus the editing I've got to deal with after that.
Yeah.
No, that was cool. All right. Well, I guess on to my 60 seconds then. All right, here's what I've been up to. Wait, since when? When did we record the last podcast?
Well, this is the weird one. I started sort of when we recorded the podcast last, and then just overlapped it slightly.
Okay.
So basically, that sentence means nothing.
Yes. I learned nothing there. But all right then, I will go for the same length of time, whatever that was. Okay. So I've got my minute starting now. So I also recorded the podcast. I, in fact, also edited it and got it onto all the online platforms, all that sort of stuff as it goes. I've written multiple video scripts this week, Matthew. I've got a new plan. Yeah, I know I said your name. It disgusted me. I've got a new plan for how I'm going to be doing videos in the future so that I can link loads of videos together, make like these perfect pathways to get people playing specific pieces that I've written. Speaking of pieces, I've written more of those as well. Started learning Java, which was quite fun. Did that on Friday, I think, sort of trying to get into the whole Minecraft modding thing for the Babinga boys. It's scary. It's scary trying to learn all that sort of stuff, but fun nonetheless. Like 25 parts in out of 70 I need to do. I began reading a book called Originals. It wasn't too useful, so I'm planning on buying some Amazon advertising books next, and I also had a few Backwards Creeks calls talking about cookies. Damn it, I did it wrong again!
How? You can't ruin the sign-off.
Oh...
I'll tell you what, though, one thing I was waiting for you to mention that I failed to mention as well is we posted the first Babinga Boys video.
Oh my god, we did.
We both forgot to mention that, and that was probably the highlight of the week.
Oh yeah. How did I miss that? So yeah, we released the first Babinga Boys video with the crazy editing that I applied to it. But to some people are going to make people unsubscribe, but hopefully make more people subscribe. Matt's even recorded a reaction video to do it after he saw it for the first time, and just watching that video alone is funny enough, so I'm going to try and get that out next week too.
And that's going on the second channel, yeah?
That's going on the Matt Esley 2 channel, yes.
Awesome. I would like to mention real quick, obviously I've managed to screw up the setup of this podcast again. I've had to record on my phone while I speak to Rob on here, whereas normally I'm speaking to Rob on here. So sorry if I'm not making eye contact with you, but I'm sort of trying to swap between the two, but I'm finding it very difficult to speak to you while looking at myself in this camera.
That's absolutely fine. And for people who are now even more confused, the fact that Matt would be looking at you directly when you're listening in a car, we're recording the video for YouTube, and of course the audio goes to Spotify and iTunes as well. So if you want to see us talk about it in real time, YouTube is the place to go.
I forgot about that minor detail. Most people will listen to this on audio, don't they?
Yes.
Damn,
yes.
I could have got away with it. Anyway, so we want to talk a little bit about presenting. This hasn't been the greatest start to it, to be honest, but, this is kind of how we do things. We just sort of attack things with a general plan in mind, and then we go from there. So how are we going to start with this one then? I guess, how could we do it?
Well, I tell you what, let's just take it really informally. Like, you've got your own ideas about what makes a good presenting situation, or at least these like rituals that you might go through to make sure that you get the most out of it. And I guess I've got mine, and so let's just go back and forth and have a little bit of discussion about each of them. We've got quite a few things we could probably talk about, so let's just keep it cash, as the youth like to say.
Oh, that is what they say. Okay, so I guess starting from the beginning with me, if you go back to my early videos, my first ever video, I didn't want to talk on that whatsoever. I just wanted to make it a purely video thing. Kind of like if any of you have watched woodworking on YouTube, Ishitani Furniture. It's just all based around like nice sounds and the visual aspect of woodworking rather than presenting. However, I shortly found after one video that I'm no good at the audio and video side of things. I need to start having something work in my favour, so I started presenting. The videos after that were pretty poor in terms of presenting. They were very under-energetic, or they lacked energy, should I say. They didn't really they lacked a lot of direction, and there just was no sort of passion or excitement behind my voice. It was the most monotone drone you could ever find. I might have had a few sort of like self-deprecating jokes in there to kind of battle away the awkwardness of the situation, but overall it wasn't very good.
I remember listening to some of your, or at least obviously watching the YouTube videos, and when you talked about things, you just kept on going and sort of described things for as they were, and didn't really make a whole. You just didn't make it worth listening to. You were so boring, and you still are. Just get good. Come on.
I was waiting for it.
But no, it's fascinating, isn't it? How you start off, or pretty much everyone starts off. If they're reading a script, if they're trying to describe something to someone, that they do it on this whole monotone level. I guess, to be honest, there's probably just too much thought going on up here to give any sort of power to your voice, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that, and it's also, I feel like for me it was sort of the embarrassment of all of a sudden there being not eyes on me, but ears on me. It's sort of being the same thing. Like, a lot of people's focus would all of a sudden be on me, which I wasn't really used to. And I didn't want to make a fool of myself by, putting too much energy into it. Because imagine it's one of those things where you put loads of energy into it and it falls flat and it's just completely embarrassing. Whereas if you don't put the energy into it and it falls flat, it's like, I don't care anyway. I mean, look, I also wasn't... It's that kind of thing.
I mean, people have that mindset when they do it. But I'm sure everyone else who was just listening to that immediately thought, well, why don't you just go into it with all the energy and then at least you've tried? Mm-hmm. Because it's like immediately, if you're going to go into it with this bland, monotone sort of tone, you're just giving yourself a really bad chance. Mm-hmm. So you might as well just hype it up too far and then bring it back later.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny because that's eventually what I started doing. Like when I eventually graduated from narrating over videos to actually presenting in front of a camera, I'd sort of done enough narration by that point to kind of know my style with how I talk about things, you know, throwing in the odd joke and things like that. But all of a sudden, when I was in front of a camera, I didn't kind of know what to do with my hands and like my body and things like that. I was just sort of standing there and, like you said, overcompensated. If you look at any of my early videos, God, I look like one of those things outside garages that have the air blown up, so they just do that.
Wacky waving inflatable arm person thing.
I look like one of them. I can't stand still. Like there was, I don't know, I think I kept that up for like an entire year or something like that. But it was, I just purposely overcompensated for that. And there's reasons that we'll cover in a minute why that happened earlier on in those videos. Not because it wasn't always conscious that I was doing that. It was just part of the overall energy that I built up in order to have that energy when I was actually filming.
Yeah. And I guess for me, when I started doing any sort of anything in public, I guess it started for both of us probably doing gigs with the band. Like just being seen in public was scary enough, let alone like talking in public. And then of course, the YouTube videos came along kind of simultaneously, and listening to my original stuff, jeez, it's bad. And that was at uni. And I think what people need to be aware of is age has nothing to do with it. If you're really young, don't go and think, I can't do it because I haven't had the experience. No, we were at uni and we sounded crap.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, like the band actually. I think if you'd have looked at the entire lineup of the 5 of us, the 2 of us would have been the last ones you'd pick out to be doing something like we're doing now. Like in front of a camera, showing some sort of personality, because we were like statues on the stage at every apart from that one time you did a knee slide during a solo. Completely broke character.
I know. I mean, I'm so glad that I did that. I did a guitar tapping solo and a knee slide at the age of like 14 or 15 in front of 1,000 people who probably didn't care for the music we were playing at all. And thankfully, I'm just so happy I did it, because it's just enough to get over the cringe factor. Just.
That's one of those things, though, that I was mentioning earlier about not fully going for something out of fear of just being like looked down on. Like that's one of those things. I kind of knew the music was bad, so I didn't want to put energy into it, because I knew that if I did, then it would look like I'm trying too hard. I might as well just take it what it is and just stand there and do my thing. You went over that line. You're like, I'm basically Slash, like knee slide.
Didn't Henry, our drummer, just dare me to do it just beforehand? I was like, oh, why not? Let's just see what happens. But I guess that's our background from it. We've had a little bit of experience around the age of 14, 15 on stages as a band, and then uni was where it really kicked off in terms of just trying to create YouTube videos. And this was before Matt was large and before I was still tiny. So we were sort of at the same level of awkwardness with our presenting. Definitely.
And so I guess let's move on to some of the things that we found helped us during that process of transitioning from, maybe narrating. Because I think we both had that side of things as well before actually getting in front of the camera. Yeah. I mean, saying that, however, narration is a really good way, in the video side of things at least, to ease yourself into this kind of thing. Just finding your voice without the need of concentrating on what your body's doing as well as your voice. It's just practicing one thing first and then you move on to both afterwards. I think there's something worth to be said for that. What things did you find helped you when you started off?
I think that it's not so much when I started off, but something I realised I did for a really long time when starting off, and only figured out in the last few years, was I like to rush things. I would like to just speed through all the things, because I wanted to make sure that everyone got every bit of information they could have possibly got without being distracted by the fact that I was pausing or getting confused or getting nervous while I was actually saying the things I was trying to say.
You just did it.
And I'm quite proud of that, because I didn't have any stutters or anything.
Yeah.
But the point being, as soon as you slow down, there's so much more weight behind every single word. It doesn't matter whether you pause. it doesn't matter whether you take your time over stuff, and what's more, people get the point across far easily or easier. And I think it also helps stay away from that monotone feel, because you've got no choice but to add something to it.
Yeah.
When you go quickly, you just end up in the same monotone space. Like, it doesn't matter whether I'm speaking high or speaking fast or speaking low. It's all just in that same position there. And it's only when I slow down that it has a bit more impact and character, I like to think.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. It is tonality. I did exactly the same thing when I started off, and I still do it now. I'm purposely making sure I slow down now. But I've just went off like a rocket at the start of every video, and apart from anything, people who didn't, like, English wasn't their first language, they really struggled to follow the videos, let alone people who were English, actually. Like, I used to speak so fast in them, and now it's still in my habit to do so. But when people like you call me out on it, or I call myself out on it, now I'm sort of like more relaxed, and I feel like I can make more emphasis on those words, and also, you know, reduce the risk of being monotone in it.
Yeah. And funnily enough, I just watched the King's speech for the first time yesterday. Have you seen it?
I haven't, no.
It's so good.
Is it?
It's incredible. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch it. The King's speech, it's got, I believe it's Colin Firth as the main actor. And fundamentally, it's about this guy who's going to be king who has a speech impediment, and he's got to work through it. And you think, that sounds quite boring, but it actually just keeps you going the entire time, and it really makes you value the fact that you don't have it as bad as this guy does. And I'll tell you what, brilliant movie. He acts with a stutter. How does someone act a stutter? It's incredible. But yeah, distracted there. But on the same topic of presenting, great movie to watch. What was your then main point that you learnt?
So yeah, I mean, part of the transition for me from going into narrating was working out how to come across sort of excited and passionate and stuff on camera, because I was. But it's hard to do that amongst, you know, the actual demo and the talking and everything like that. And it's part of the reason why I started the YouTube channel in the first place. It's because I wanted to sort of cut away from the... I'm not going to say all the videos out there were like really boring and monotone, but there was like the majority were. And so I wanted to be sort of a younger voice in that. And so I needed to kind of double down on that sort of youthful side of things. So I did a variety of things starting off. I've got a few things here. So what I did to begin with was I got myself a uniform, as it were. I'm wearing it now, black, kind of like a brand sort of thing. And I can't even remember where I read this, but it's some sort of placebo I've got going on, where it's wherever I'm wearing black, I'm in work mode. Whenever I'm not wearing black, I'm in casual mode, kind of thing. And so it took a few videos to get started. And if you go back to the ones in, October 2017 when I started, you'll see I sort of wore darker clothes, and then it started just getting more and more black as time went on, because I started finding confidence in these clothes that I was wearing. It was just this mental switch. It's like, right, I'm here to do this. I'm going to be in, then out, and then go home. Funnily enough, that's actually translated even further to Rykertwood now, where if I go in and I'm not wearing black clothes, students don't bother me because they know I'm not in work mode. It's sort of like... It's like I've come in wearing flip-flops and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's like
non-uniform day, you've decided.
Yeah, it's weird. I used to have the same at Axminster as well. If I went in wearing black, which is very similar to their uniform, people would come up and like ask me questions and things, because I was obviously regulars would have noticed me. But if I went in wearing other things, they'd have thought, he's just here to pick up a few things. It's quite cool. But I did that to kind of get that initial confidence up of like this constant that I didn't have to worry about, this time I'm wearing this, or like just various other things. I just wanted to have this constant that was there that I could stick with each time. On top of that, I watched a few videos on like stance and things like that, and it actually made me remember of a science teacher we used to have. I don't know if you had him, Mr. Marshall.
No, I never had Mr. Marshall.
So I don't remember any of his lessons, but
great science teacher.
Yeah, I do remember how he used to stand very weirdly. And he used to stand with an abnormally wide stance, a very wide stance, like legs quite wide, either with hands in his pockets or crossed arms or something like that, mainly when the class was talking and he needed us to quieten down. He'd never shout or anything like that. It would just be wide stance, hands in pockets, crossed arms, just looking around, making eye contact with people. And when he did that, it's kind of like, you know, there's no presenting in that. That's just body language. And it's like, oh, shit. Sorry. It's like, okay, he's in a position now to floor us or something like that. Like there's obviously authority there. Just confidence, standing there, wide stance, cross legs, hands in pockets, something like that. And not that I sort of took that and applied it to my videos, but it just made me remember, like, stance is really important with this kind of thing, because it's just this sort of, it plays on your mind, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, did that work though in the class? I can't believe it would work with a class of you, and I assume Henry was somewhere in there as well.
Well, I mean, it's the only thing I remember, and I remember him having some sort of authority when he was there. Like, you know, it's not, I didn't not remember anything because we misbehaved. We did quite a bit, but it was, I just remember his sort of authority there, kind of thing, and it was mainly the authority in that bloody stance that he ddid.
But, well, I mean, with that being said, you might want to think about your stance when you're doing this sort of thing, but you're probably going to... You want to leave that to the last moment and think more about what you're saying, because if you start to include what you're doing with your stance, I don't know if you're going to start to get distracted.
I think, okay, maybe stance is too located to the legs, but what I'm talking about is making yourself kind of big and, like, not overly animated, but just open. I think maybe him standing there with crossed arms is probably not the right example of it, but if you do stand there with crossed arms, you're automatically kind of closed off, you feel a bit reserved. Whereas if you'll see in a lot of my videos, I sort of do open arm gestures. There was some probably about a year after where I started, where I was doing like big gestures, like massive ones, pointing to the corner of the screen when a card popped up and things like that. Like, it's all sort of in the mind of making yourself as big and open as possible, I suppose. Not to be approachable, but just to have presence, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. There's a lot to be said for making sure that you're standing like you've got purpose, and you're not trying to shy away. Like, a lot of this is always going to come back to the same concept of just do it as if no one gives a damn. Just do it because you want to put your best foot forward. You're not trying to hide anything. You're just presenting yourself because you know what you're talking about.
Moving is a massive thing with this. Like, I think I've noticed it in your videos, and I definitely do it in mine. When we start a new camera angle or something like that, we often like sort of walk into frame kind of thing and just start that sentence with a bit of movement. I think I remember you saying in the cabinet series when you were moving it all, I started this video with the same sort of movement every single time. I sort of rock to the right and then left, centre myself, and I do that. I don't know why. Yeah. It's just built into me. It's just like this bit of movement at the start, adds a bit of energy. Yeah,
and that's it. And I guess that's the next point for me to come across is in my sort of more recent videos when I started taking it a little bit more seriously in terms of story and direction, I realised that actually moving into the camera shots or just doing something really unique, like I don't know, you could be literally holding the camera and spinning around with it while you're talking, and just that movement is enough to change the way you present because it's so active. And it also really adds to the visual aspects, because if you plan it right and you think about, right, if I say this line now and sort of drift off to the right, and I realise that the audio doesn't work for that, but for video I just moved off to the right, then I can use that same movement to enter the next shot, and I'm going to be able to present it with a bit more action because I'm literally doing more action, and it's going to look good on screen because it's like I intentionally made these perfect cuts to travel from one location to another.
Yeah, that's it. If you travel off the left-hand side of the screen and then on the next shot you travel in from the left-hand side of the screen, it's going to look a bit weird. Like, it's like this weird zigzag thing. Whereas if you travel off the left of one and then into the right of the second one, that's more of like a video trick, I suppose, but it is that overall thing of...
It's a video trick, but it's combined with that movement of action, so that your voice carries just as much movement, if that makes sense. Like you're not stagnant because you're just sitting still and you're thinking about what you're going to say next. You're actually making an effort to get in front of that camera and present your point, whatever that might be.
Yeah. I guess, so I've got another point here. It's with regards to the whole movement side of things and energizing yourself. It's literally energizing yourself before you do this kind of thing. I can't even remember where I saw it. Was
Alan. Wasn't
Alan. That was one, but I have seen it before that. Basically, before he gets on stage, he's got this mini trampoline and he just jumps up and down on it a bunch of times before presenting to millions of people.
Really?
And it's just a way of like bouncing up and down, getting a bit of energy. And obviously, I don't have a little trampoline in this workshop. I don't think you've got one at home. But literally just something like jumping on the spot, doing some star jumps, something stupid like that. I don't do it now, but when I was on my own in that workshop, starting off, firstly, great way to stay warm. Secondly, really good way of energizing yourself.
Yeah, I've actually seen quite a few different people in bands when I've done music videos or been backstage at gigs and stuff. A lot of band people just get down and do press-ups.
Yeah.
They'll just go and do the press-ups to just get that blood flowing and just get the energy starting before they've even got onto stage. Because there's no point warming up when you're on stage. It's too late then. Get the warm-up in now, and then you're ready to go. You're hot, you're live, and you're going to get that action and driving forwards.
Yeah, genuine, like that whole thing of just energizing yourself is invaluable, I think. It's so good. I mean, before going on stage, absolutely brilliant. And just to highlight what Rob said, don't feel embarrassed about doing it. I mean, if someone's watching you, they'll probably understand, I think. Yeah. I think you've seen me do it as well, actually. Not that I do it often, but I think when you first came into the workshop and I was nervous about presenting in front of you, I would do stupid things like maybe lap around the power tool workbench or something weird like that. You just naturally do laps around Bertha just beforehand anyway. Like when you're thinking, when you're doing stuff, you just get the movement starting. Yeah, it's a really good way of doing things. So definitely take that as a sort of tactic to increasing your energy when you're doing presenting or before you're doing presenting.
Yeah, and I've just realised, like, there's probably a reason why people pace when they're nervous. It's to try and get that energy like level. They're just trying to distract themselves. They're trying to move on to a different position. So it's like embrace that whole idea of, I could be walking around nervous, or I could be jumping around and getting pumped to actually get this thing done.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the next one I've got here is with the same concept of changing their camera angle. Use that change of camera angle to help you with what you're stuck saying. So if you've got to the end of a sentence, or you're like halfway through it and you don't know where you've gone with it, and maybe you've tried this 2 or 3 times in a take and it's just not working, change the setup. Doesn't matter whether you're literally turning 90 degrees or literally going to a different room or suddenly sitting down on the floor. That whole change of environment, that change of perspective will change the way you're thinking enough to get those words out. And I found that that's a really good way of just keeping the video flowing and keeping the recording going. Obviously, it doesn't apply to, say, presenting on a stage. You can't really do much there. But I guess like just moving to different places and giving yourself literal space to think is really helpful with the video side of things more than anything else.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear if you have this same thing that I have. Like, I get it really bad with the monthly updates or the monthly updates I used to do, where I wasn't doing anything exciting. I was just there talking to a camera, updating people on what I did every month. And because of that, I didn't have anything that I could switch the camera to on the bench. Or, like, I did sometimes, but not most of the time. It was mainly just me talking. And I had to focus so much on what I was saying that if I screwed up a sentence or something like that, I would go back and re-say it. And even just the simplest sentences, 10 words or whatever, I can't think of anything, but you'd say it, you'd screw up a word. You'd say it again, you'd screw up a word. And you just keep trying this same sentence over and over again, looking at the camera, stopping, look at it. And I feel like this internal static or heat or something build up in my head, not through anger or anything, just like the equivalent of digital noise but in my face. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but like maybe it's some level of frustration or something like that, but it's focusing more on the concepts that I'm about to screw up rather than what I'm actually saying.
Yeah.
And you reckon you've had that?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. For me, I guess it really manifests itself as quite a bit more frustration. I will get to the point of being literally wanting to punch things because I'm just so furious that I keep getting stuck on the same simple things over and over and over. And the longer... I'm not saying this happens every time, but if I start to make a mistake, I get stuck on that in different ways. I repeat the same sentences and then I have a mistake in a different place. And then I'll have a mistake in a different place. And that internal stress is just building there. And like you say, you start to focus more on the fact that you're going to make a mistake than actually the line you were meant to say in the first place.
But then it sort of has that vicious cycle of, right, I'm on my second attempt, it hasn't gone well, and then you start rushing it, which then brings us back to the earlier thing of talking too fast, which then leads to more screw-ups. And it's literally, so this is what Rob talks about just now. When we get to that point, we tend to just stop the camera now and change the angle of it. Attack it from a different perspective, looking a different way, and just that short thing of stopping the camera and moving it just gives you that little bit of headspace to reset and rethink. It's such a good way of doing things.
Yeah, you get to walk out of that red mist that descended before your face and just leave that zone of just pure frustration and start over as if nothing happened. And apart from anything else, if you've scripted it, fine. Like you're maybe looking for the exact words, but even when you do that change of movement, you might suddenly decide, I'm just going to take the point that sentence said and just say it in my own way. And more often than not, you end up with a better result because it just sounded natural and you weren't trying to force it out.
Yeah. Anyway, so the next point, how much to plan? How much to plan? So what's been your perspective on this? How much have you planned and how much do you do now?
I see mine's been quite a roller coaster with that. I think I initially started with I tell you what, I initially started with going without any planning at all. I just press the record button and just hope that whatever I wanted to say was going to come out in some format and I was going to fix it in the edit later. I later learned that the edit is incredibly boring if you've got to go through multiple mistakes over and over and over again and delete them and just try and get it down to a reasonable level. I then moved to giving myself at least a few bullet points, giving myself just like a basis to work with, and I think that's a really good way of making stuff come across naturally and have conversations that lead on from one another and have a bit of flow to it. But for me, and the way I work, and this is sort of becoming a bit more from a video editor's perspective, I want to minimize the amount of time I'm video editing massively. I want to make sure that I can record a video and get it edited in a really short space of time so I don't feel like I could be doing something else more productive. So now I script everything.
Really? What, word for word?
Every single word.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm going to do it in an entirely different way. All of my videos from now on. Well, not... I'm going to split the channel, like you did.
Nice.
And so I'm going to have piano lessons, which are going to be no more than 5 minutes in length, purely scripted. I'm going to write it all out first. So I'm going to write out like a batch of 5 or 10 so that I know what I've said previously. I'm then going to do a voiceover on the production stuff I've got at home and literally say the script the entire way through, bearing in mind I haven't recorded any video yet, just doing the audio. And then I'm going to fit all of the diagrams, all of the motion into that script after the fact so that it always remains under 5 minutes long.
Right.
Because I'm basically going to try and create this thing where, say, I create a piece of music, I want to be able to record one video, 5 minutes long, that says, right, here's what you need, here's the specific details you need to know to be able to play this. Otherwise, follow this playlist that goes from knowing nothing to being able to play this piece. And I want to be able to do that for every single piece I've got.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm scripting it. So I've gone from the whole idea of freedom and natural sounding stuff, but I've sort of taken it the opposite way, probably the way you didn't expect, and get it word for word so that I get the timing down and so that I get my editing time into a really concise sort of time zone, I guess.
I think informative videos are very good to be scripted. Like if I look at analysis videos and things like that, and just ones that you're talking about, if they're scripted and every word is intentional, it works so well, I think, because it's just and I guess that's what I strive for with my free online woodworking school videos. It's to make sure every single word that comes out is perfect, clear, concise, which makes me wonder, like, maybe I should script them, but instead I just try and battle the same sentence over and over again, which then leads to that thing of where we do the camera angle switch and all that. But yeah, like, I think that'd be interesting to see how that plays out for you, being fully scripted.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say fully script everything, but I really think that if you're getting into this for the first time, don't go into it blind. Give yourself a set of 3 to 5 bullet points to cover in whatever the video topic is. Doesn't matter what you're making. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And video topic could be a podcast topic if you're starting a podcast. Just make sure you've got those key bullet points that you can make sure that you tick off throughout the video. Because at the start of a production process, you might think, right, yeah, this is what I want to say, this is what I want to teach, this is what I want to get across. And by the time you get to the edit, which could be far away from the location that you just did all the filming, by the time you get to that edit, you might find out you didn't actually say exactly what you meant to say. So giving yourself the bullet points as a structure, as a framework, is a great starting point. But if you want to make it all about your voice, and you could do this, arguably you could do this with a podcast, you could just script the entire thing.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that it still presents naturally, and you've got to script it as if you're having a conversation.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with, at least our workshop interactions, you can't script that sort of thing. And
No.
like the best interactions we've had, like surrounding the Belvita moments and just things where I've like pranked you and stuff like that, they've been purely unscripted. And if we worked with scripted videos, stuff like that probably wouldn't have happened. And if it did happen, it would have seemed like, let's say we caught one of those moments out of the blue. Everything in the video was scripted, and I'm not going to say robotic, but everything was kind of like too perfect, and then all of a sudden this thing got chucked in.
Yeah,
the whole theme. So I think, like, at least for me, I do what you just said. I've got bullet points and stuff with each of these videos I'm doing for the free online woodworking school. There is the argument that I could script them, but instead I just heavily bullet point them. And the reason for that is because the subject in mind, I don't know if I might be assuming things here with music, but when you're teaching music, there's almost, I'm going to say there is like a way to do things. Like there is an answer at the end. Of course, like you could maybe vary a riff or whatever, and I don't know. Whereas with woodwork, let's say I scripted something completely out and then I make a small mistake when I'm doing it. I then need to talk about how I'm fixing that mistake and like why it happened and things like that. Whereas like I didn't plan for that. When I was doing my script, all of a sudden I'm off-piste and I've got no idea where I'm going. And then the whole theme of the video's scripted, unscripted, like it's quite weird. So that's why I loosely plan things. It's because I don't trust myself to stay on plan.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense when it comes to something that can have varying direction. And like you say, well, I mean, with music, it's either it is or it isn't, unless you're sort of composing or improvising something, and in which case, those are the moments when you'd say, right, I'm going to have a 3 to 5 point bullet list to say, right, if you want to get into improvisation, you need to cover this, 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 and this, and I'm going to give you examples, and then those examples should normally be just off the top of your head, so then you're going to change the way you describe things and present things. Whereas if I'm talking about reading rhythms, reading notation, it's not like the letter or the note E is going to change its position on the stave. It just is what it is. So that's when I can be absolutely specific, which is why I think for the majority of my videos, I'm going to make them scripted. But when it comes to just creating the last video at the end to show people the highlighted bits of a piece to make sure they know what they're doing, that'll probably just be improv there in the moment, just like, right, have a look at these. These are the things that I think you're going to struggle most with. let's go through them, let's see what happens. And that might have a varied outcome, which might change the way I describe things. But everything prior to that, I want to be logical, step by step, clear and concise. Thus, the scripting.
I think that's an interesting reason as to why, like, we've split our channels, not only to make it easier for viewers, but also to make it easier for us. Like, when I'm in my free online woodworking school teacher mode, there's less of the jokes, less of the sort of haphazardness, although it tends to sneak its way into those videos somewhat. But like, the personality in those videos is built around tutor, authority, knows what he's doing. And then we do videos on the main channel, like the shed video, the mezzanine floor, where all that's out the window and is just this clumsy pillock who barely knows what he's doing. And having all of that
has entertainment value.
Yeah, but having all that chucked on one channel, it's like, well, who is this guy? So, like, not only separating it for the subject, but also just the general... Because when presenting, you do need to put on a different personality. That how we come across on camera is not how we are in everyday life. We still take the piss of each other, and we still have, like, our relationship's very much the same, but the way we talk is not like this at all. I'm quite not quiet, but quite a reserved person, I would say. I don't...
Yeah, I'd say so.
Like, I'm not, like, up on the dance floor or anything like that, things like that. I like to sort of sit back and watch kind of thing. Yeah. I assume you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I don't want to be in front of a camera. Like that's sort of a mindset that I initially started off with. Like, I don't want to be the person in the limelight. I don't want to be the person that people are listening to. I just want to be following everyone else and just doing what I need to do. Yeah. And so you start to put on this. I guess it's just an outgoing personality to begin with. And I think that sort of changed the way I've acted and changed the way I do things for the better, to be honest.
Yes.
And if that's one argument for starting a YouTube channel, I think that's as good as argument as any, is to just change the way you present yourself to just people in general. And so, it's putting on a little bit of a persona to make sure your point gets across without sort of suggesting that you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm a little bit shy and I want to... And I think I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not really sure. Yeah,
I feel like for me, YouTube becomes a little bit of an outlet to become the person that... Oh, okay, my second mic's just died, so hopefully this one's still recording. But it becomes a bit of an outlet for, like, me to not become the person that I want to be, but, like, I was obviously quite a introverted, quiet child. And then to sort of have this outlet now to talk and be sort of this extroverted personality, it's nice to have an area to do that I feel is safe and is actually beneficial to do it, because, in all the cameras gone as well now, because like in any day conversation and things like that, I'm not really that. I stand very still. I don't move that much. It's just on camera that's when I feel sort of like that personality. I put on my black clothes. I put on that presenting confident personality and I go for it. And the same if like I'm on stage or teaching or something like that. When I've got eyes on me, that switches on and I feel comfortable doing that. When I'm not, and it's just everyday life, those clothes come off. Well, obviously I still have clothes on, but that's why I feel confident. But I feel confident in that personality as well, even though it's a bit different. Yeah. But it's just weird. Like it's two personalities, I guess is what I'm saying here.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get on to a last couple of points that we've got here for sort of helping your presenting. The last couple I've got is how to start and end your sentences. So the irony is I've just started it with one of the words I say not to start it with. So when you use the word so, it starts to become really mundane. And it's very easy to use it over and over again. So you don't want to use it. So you don't want to make it sound like you don't know what you're doing. So there.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. And weirdly, I mean, I don't know why I used to do this, but when I first started teaching, I started to notice that I was saying so all the time. And then I would say, oh, sorry, I just keep on saying so. I don't know why I keep doing it. I'm sure no one noticed. And yet I would... it's so bad. I cringe at it. But anyway, even if people don't really notice it so much, try and stay away from it, because then your sentences have a better beginning. They get people involved more often rather than just so that's the way it goes. Like it just doesn't have as much impact. And then you want to make sure you finish them with a proper ending. Otherwise, you just sort of trail off, and you're not really, yeah,
like that.
Exactly. See, Matt likes to do this, and I've told him off multiple times while doing videos, because he ends sentences or ends like proper segments to a video with, so yeah. And then it's a cut. I mean, like, what was that?
So that for me is part of the nerves with having someone else in the workshop with me, because if I'm in control of the camera and when it turns off and things like that, like I know when my sentence ends and I want to turn it off. Whereas like when it's you filming, we're not connected like that. So I finish my sentence, kind of, and then you haven't turned off the camera yet. So I'm like, yeah, turn it off. It's kind of that sort of thing, but not that kind of thing. It's just that comes from, at least from my point of view, with having someone else filming. I just feel like there's less judgment, I suppose, if I screw things up, kind of thing, if it's just me.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I'm not really sort of judging people with whether they're saying so or whether they're saying yeah when they finish the end of a sentence. I just want to make people aware that if you can try and change it up so that both the beginning and the end really has significant purpose, you're going to keep people following along for a lot longer. And I think it's just going to have a bit more of an impact when you suddenly change topic and you haven't ended it with a so yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that brings on to the inflections as well at the end, which was something we picked up. It's so obvious, it's really annoyingly obvious, but we picked it up from a presentation we watched recently on presenting skills, funnily enough. It's, downwards and upwards inflections. So if you start a sentence saying, we're going over here, or let's start it again, we're going over here, there's question in that second one. And they're not going to follow that guy. They're going to follow the guy that started with the downward inflection, the authority kind of thing. And so when I'm doing my videos now, and I say, like, let's get started on something, I go, let's get started. And I sort of lower the voice at the end, and it's sort of like people are like, whoa, this guy means stuff. Whereas previously, when I was over energetic, I would have gone, so let's get started, or something like that. I got that a bit wrong. But
No. I think that's where... I think that's the line that people are going to notice the most, because obviously if you have the upwards inflection, it sounds like you're questioning it to begin with, and that's quite obvious, that's kind of common sense. But when you stay higher, even if you go high then low, it still doesn't quite work as much as this is it. Going lower, making sure that it has that purpose towards the end of a sentence, because it's just we're not talking about the really obvious generic American high schooler who always has that upwards tone towards the end. It's more just making sure that you're confident what you're saying next.
Yeah, you just did it then with next.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the whole element of adding not unauthority, but just questioning into your voice, I suppose. If you end on a high note, there's something seems a bit wrong about it. It's not a trustworthy thing, and it just sounds like... Obviously, it has its place, but not when you're trying to come across as a confident presenter. You need to be finishing things with that downward inflection.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So all of these things, there's a lot to think about. You can get a little bit overwhelmed potentially about how much is going on, and we even haven't even touched on stuff like ers and ums and all that sort of thing, because it actually doesn't matter.
No,
the ers and the ums, if you're doing a podcast and you're that fussy, you can edit them out, but most of the time people don't really care, and it's more about the character that you've got within your voice to begin with, and if you can get that from the get-go, if you can keep your momentum going with every sentence that you say, then you're going to have a better chance of keeping people interested in what you're saying and just retaining their focus so they actually learn from you at the end.
Yeah, I think like there's I guess with regards to the ums and the ers, just to quickly touch on that, there are intentional and unintentional pauses in language. So, for example, when at the start we talked a little bit about phrasing and tonality and slowing down with things, those pauses are intentional. And those are fine. Those are good. I'm doing it a little bit now. But those kind of build on what you're saying and add a bit of emphasis. Whereas there's those unintentional ones where you just forget what you're saying and you start going around in circles, or you just, like if I'm on camera, I'll kind of just look down, keep the camera rolling, I'll just look out the window and just think through what I'm going in my head. Mm-hmm. With video editing, keep those intentional ones in there and cut out the unintentional ones. And those intentional ones could be things like ums and ers. They're kind of unintentional in a way, but it's just sort of, it's built into the language. And apart from anything, it's annoying to edit, like you said as well. Yeah.
You can have an that's because you're stuck on what you're saying, but you can have an because you're thinking so much about how you want to present it. And I think sometimes when somebody goes and sort of describes a process, imagining you're describing a process, and then I was to hear you over one particular thought or another, it just makes me more aware that you've got other things that you could be saying about this, rather than he's got stuck, he doesn't know what to say. Like there's a slight difference in there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of videos that I've watched in the past that have like really struggled to pique my interest because of their energy on camera, and it's mainly just because they take too long to get words out, and there's long pauses between sentences where they're obviously thinking about what to say next when they could just cut that out.
Cut that.
Yeah, if you're thinking about what to say, cut it out. If it's just a little thing in a sentence, keep it in. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So, to go over the bullet points that I've got basically to cover? TH? See, let's not talk about enunciation. Let's not go down that route. I don't think either of us are very good at that, but I'm obviously abysmal. So, my main thing to begin was to slow down, keep things steady. If you enter the frame, if you enter the shot with a bit of action, then the lines come out a bit more confidently. If you're stuck on what to say, change camera angles and start and end your sentences with purpose.
Nice downward inflection there.
Thank you. So what did you have?
So my things are, I guess the overall holistic thing of mine is give yourself some constants to work with. Going back to the start of mine, it was wearing the same clothes that I have in presenting mode. It was having certain stances and gestures and movements that I do to present the same thing over and over. Script your videos, or at least give yourself bullet points and scripts in the same way each time. And when you start seeing limitations, change it. Don't constantly go for different things at the start. Just stick with one thing, try one thing at a time. But above all, with presenting, there's so many different things going on in your head while also trying to keep the presentation going. Just give yourself as best chance as possible with a solid foundation, and give yourself those constants, which I just mentioned.
Yeah, all makes sense there. So I guess the last one that we didn't comment on it was one of your bullet points you've got here. Just a little final one.
Oh, yes.
Look at the lens, not at the flip out screen. So if you've been watching this on YouTube, you will have been seeing Matt has forgotten that he's meant to be looking at the lens and has looked down at this screen so often. Essentially, there's no point just staring at yourself. Be confident with how you positioned it to begin with, and then purely look at the lens. If you've got a flip out screen that's been distracting you, flip it in. And if you're working on a mobile device, try it with the back camera, not the selfie camera, because you're going to get better quality to begin with, and you're also not going to get distracted by your own big face.
Yes, yeah, big one that. Hard one to get over as well.
Yeah,
awesome.
Exactly.
All right, so that pretty much covers presenting for the Where's My Thing podcast. It's been a good talk.
Yeah, it has been. I've enjoyed it very much.
So, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to press the like button or leave us a rating or something like that. I still don't know how this thing works. I probably should do. Yeah. And, go on, you're better at this sort of thing. How do we end these? Wait, I'll finish. So, yeah.
Thanks. You've ruined the ending yet again. Even before the so, yeah, it was already ruined. But make sure to review us on iTunes if you thought this was a good podcast. Give us a rating, give us a bit of feedback. That'd be amazing. You can find us on the where'smythingpodcast.com website. There's social media links at the bottom of the page, as well as an email address that you can actually email. So you can actually get in contact with us and let us know what you think or what you'd like us to talk about in the future.
Nice script reading there. All right, we will see you next week on the Where's My Thing podcast.
What script?
Just thought I'd throw it there. We'll see you next week on the Where's My Thing podcast.
See you then. I hate you. You ruin it every time.